First off, we're going to have Karen. She's going to be speaking on the Transportation System Plan and the Citywide Transportation Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was good. And the last name is Swirsky, but you don't need to remember that. So I wanted to come and talk to you for just a few minutes about the overall Transportation Systems Plan, mainly because we'll be coming back to you in January with some fairly specific asks. So we have started this transportation plan. Now, some of you are probably aware that in 2016, we expanded the urban growth boundary and we updated our comprehensive plan. We did a minor update to the transportation plan at that time to make sure that were covering the proposed expansion areas. But it really became clear that we needed to shake the rug out, that the transportation plan was 20 years old and it needed to be updated. So that's the work that we're doing now. What is a transportation plan? Well, technically it's an element of the comprehensive plan. That may or may not mean anything to you. But what it really is an investment and a management plan for the city. It's how we spend our money on transportation for the next it's to 2040. So it's a 20-year plan. And yeah, that's okay, you can go back to that. So this is Oregon. We have a state rule that we have to follow. It's called the Transportation Planning Rule. It does set up some sideboards for us. But within the sideboards that the state sets up for us, we have a lot of liberty to make it Ben's plan. So the other thing that we're doing that I should point out, does everyone, when I say Metropolitan Planning Organization or MPO, is that a familiar term to people? No. Okay. So, James, you don't count. You know everything. So when a city has a population of greater than 50,000 people, there's a federal designation called the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and basically it gives us more money. So Bend is a little unusual in that our MPO boundaries are the same essentially as the city boundary. In most parts of the state, the MPO is a conglomeration of cities, but here we have, so we are working very closely with the MPO to make sure that our transportation plans are essentially the same. It's important to us to meet the MPO's requirements because they get federal money, and that helps us with our transportation funding. So, next. There's a lot going on right now in Bend. It's not just the transportation plan update. Some of you may have gotten a link to the Parkway survey. So ODOT is updating the Parkway plan. Big stuff possibly happening on the Parkway, which of course affects our system. Cascade Eats Transit, which is our transit provider, is also updating their regional transit plan. So we're coordinating with them because we're required to have a transit element in our transit plan, in our transportation plan. We want to make sure they match, only makes sense. And then Community Options, which is a nonprofit, is helping us with something called transportation demand management that I don't need to dive into today. If anyone has questions about it, I'm happy to talk about it. So, this is how we have organized the process. So we have done this, we have the City Council and the Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board are the final decision makers. But in between, we're using something called the Steering Committee, which is basically those two bodies matched together with a planning commissioner on it. We have a citywide transportation advisory committee. There are 26 people. It's a large committee selected by council. We are working them really hard. Some of them are kind of cross-eyed right now.
More volunteers.
Yeah, they're all volunteers. And they're doing really, really important work. All of their meetings are open to the public. All of the information is posted on our website. And then inside the Transportation Advisory Committee, or CTAC as we call them, because we always have acronyms, right? We have some working groups. Right now, our most active working group is called the Funding Working Group. They're actually meeting next week on Halloween, costumes optional, to present to us what they're calling an initial funding assessment. They've been tasked with finding maybe some less conventional funding sources for transportation as well as the usual suspects. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So next. We are now in phase one. We're reaching the completion of phase one at the end of the year. because as I said, we were coordinating with the MPO, phase one is what we are calling our regional or citywide transportation system. It's the higher level streets. So when I say collector and arterial, everyone pretty much knows what I mean by that, as opposed to the local streets that go through your neighborhood. So for this phase of the project, we're concentrating on these higher level systems. When we move into phase two, we will be coming to the neighborhoods, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the morning. We want to fill in the gaps. We want to talk to you guys who use the local system daily to tell us stuff that we need to know. So, and then in phase three, we'll combine those two phases. We'll come up with a citywide plan. We'll do policy development and come up with a funding package. And then hopefully in early 2020, we'll have a plan that will get adopted, and maybe I can think about retiring, maybe. So as I was saying, this phase one is the citywide system. It's focusing on collectors and arterials. We assumed a baseline of projects, which are those things that are already in our capital improvement program. And we are, at this point in time, we've developed these three, what we call scenarios, and they're bookends of various approaches to how to improve the transportation system. So we have one that assumes that we're going to build some new big roads. We have another one that assumes that we're going to widen a bunch of roads. And then we have another one that just says we aren't going to actually build a bunch of stuff, but we're going to make our system function more efficiently. Now, we're not picking one of those scenarios. We're looking at what projects perform the best out of each one of those scenarios, and we'll be creating what we are calling a preferred scenario or a hybrid scenario. All of that work is happening in November and December. So if you're interested in that stuff, those are the CTAC meetings to come to. And then we're also identifying, as I said, the initial funding assessment and beginning work on the local projects in January. So I just put this slide up to show you, we know a lot about our transportation system. We have tons of data. We're a little challenged to get the data to coordinate together, but we're working on that as well. So we know where a lot of our hotspots are. We know where there are gaps in the system. But what we're trying to do is collect the more fine-grained data to fill all that in. We have some goals that were developed starting with council initiation. They provided us with some overarching goals, and CTEC massaged them a little bit. These are going to be the goals that we measure all of our transportation projects against. There's something for everyone, and we were curious about which of these goals were the most important to the general population. In last June, we had our initial open house, and we had an online open house. And again, we know that the people who come to those open houses and participate in those open houses, there's a little bit of self-selection there. They're the people who are interested. But the results are still important to us. We had about 1,500 respondents total. And it was interesting to us that the top two, what we asked people to do was select their top three goals. We didn't ask them to rank them, we just took the top three. But safety, and I think most people would agree that's important in your transportation system. And then the one that kind of encompasses everything, capacity, quality, and connectivity is the second one. And because those are so important, those tend to be the ones that we look at the hardest. But all of the goals are important, and we're measuring all the projects against all the goals. Funding transportation is a challenge. In the city, we have a funding source for sewer, and we have one for water, but we don't have a user fee for transportation. You know, we don't have a gas tax, we don't have any other sort of way. So it's always challenging for us. We have system development charges that are applied to new projects, but backfilling and big capital improvement projects and things like, you know, improving the transit system, those are all challenging for us. So we have, on top of that, costs of construction are going up. We have quite a bit of what we call deferred street maintenance. And if you have questions about that, Tom can answer them. But really what it is we have streets in the city that have gotten bad enough so that just paving them is probably not enough. They need to be reconstructed. So that's a funding challenge for us. And you might have noticed we're growing pretty fast. So we have more people using our streets. So the funding work group has been looking at all the possibilities for funding, including some that are pretty crazy, pretty interesting out there. And they've narrowed them down to what we're calling the initial funding package, and it's a combination of various funding sources. And that is what we're right now in the second level of developing the package of funding sources. And if folks are interested in that, they can go to the website, they can see what that document is, and they could attend the meeting next Wednesday at council chambers, and I've lost the time, 3 o'clock I think, but look on the website, it's there. And so this is what we hope to do. We have the funding work that we're doing, and we have the project selection, project and programs selection, and hopefully that we will put them all together, develop a way for prioritizing them, probably against those goals I showed you, and create an implementation plan and then adopt in 2020. So a little bit about the neighborhood outreach. We're going to be doing the neighborhood outreach in quadrants, and so those colors are so area 3 includes Larkspur, Old Farm, and Southeast. I wish we could do one in each neighborhood, and you guys get amazing turnouts. Some of the other neighborhoods associations don't, but and I believe the venue that we've selected is this one. I think we'll be at the Senior Center. You'll get plenty of advance notice. It'll be sometime during the second 2 weeks of January next year, and it'll be a couple of hours workshop that we'd like people to come and let us know what their concerns are and maybe begin to help us prioritize those. And then the results will be combined with the phase 1 work. So that is all I have to tell you. This is a 20, 30,000 foot level plan. I'm happy to answer questions, and anytime anyone wants to get me, that's where you can find me.
If it's not adopted until 2020, when will things actually start to change?
Well, that's an interesting question, because things are starting to change now. There's things that we're trying to implement, little things now. What the city would like to do is get the plan adopted and then create probably an ask for the voters for some kind of a bond measure. So large capital improvement projects are probably several years off, but policy and programs could be implemented much sooner than that.
Large ones besides the ones we're doing.
Besides the big ones we're doing now. Yeah, and I know 2020 sounds like a long ways off, but in the planning world, that is freaking tomorrow. It's really
And
fast.
just so everybody knows, I've sat in a couple of these CTAC meetings. The majority of the representatives on the committee, and they represent all different organizations, groups, and private citizens, every single group you can possibly imagine, they all want to see faster results. It has been one of the issues I've seen in almost every single CTAC meeting is, why can't we just bring city council this little stuff and this little stuff? We all know that already. Why wait till 2020? So I think if that committee has its way, they may push a little bit faster on city staff and city council. I mean, there's no reason to wait 2 years when we already have so many givens that are already current reality.
Hi, Tom.
Who decides, once this is all done, who decides the prioritization of the projects that get done first?
So for the transportation systems plan, there will be a set of evaluation criteria, and that will, for the plan, that will help us prioritize the projects. Now the council has the ability to reprioritize every time they do their capital improvement program, but the transportation plan should be providing them overarching guidance And of course, the other thing that I should say is that this plan is meant, it's gonna be built to be updated more than once every 20 years, every 5 years, in sync with the MPO plan. And so it's always an opportunity to reevaluate priorities on an ongoing basis. Because, you know, a priority for 2018 could very well be different than a priority for 2038, yeah, so.
Karen, you might mention the Murphy Road project, I think should be, by 2020 will be under construction.
So the Murphy Road and the Empire Road projects are being done separately from this TSP project. The council decided that those were important enough to advance. So, and Tom's gonna talk a little bit about the Murphy Road project specifically. And of course, that's always an option. The limitation is funding. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Garrett's gonna talk about it. Sorry.
Karen, you keep mentioning the MPO, would you mind explaining who's on that board
Okay.
and their voting whatnots? Because
Okay.
people need to know how it is separate from the city of Bend, but still very actively spoken for by the city of Bend.
Well, there's two different roles. The MPO Policy Board consists of 3 city councilors, Councilor Mosley is one, and a representative from the county, County Commissioner DeBone, and a representative from the Oregon Department of Transportation. But what we have done is, and this council, the city council, the 3 councilors have 1 vote, is that correct? Yeah, but what we've done is we've taken those folks and asked them to also serve as part of the steering committee for the transportation plan. So it's the whole city council, all 7 folks, plus the 3 4 MPO board people, plus a, well, there's duplicate there, plus a planning commissioner. So we have a 10-person steering committee for this job. Now, ultimately, the MPO plan goes to the MPO policy board, and the city's TSP goes to the city council, but that's, you don't need all that detail. Yes, sir.
So we're way behind on this, and it's going to take maybe 50 million or 100 million or something like that to get it where it really needs to be, maybe more. Park District has done a pretty good job over the last 20 years of convincing Bendites to pony up money for some pretty outstanding facilities. Is the city planning, is the city, as near as you can tell, intending to do what the Park District did and to sell the citizens of Bend on ponying up the $50 million, $100 million to do this? Or is it going to be just some kibbles and bits?
No, I fully expect that effort, and we just finished up, you might have seen in the paper, we just finished up our last bond ask, which was a big one, got a lot of really wonderful projects out of that. The anticipation is that there will be something similar to that coming out of this. Yeah. Is that correct, Tom?
Anything else on transportation planning?
And I'll stick around if you, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
With all the homes being planned to be built, how much of this transportation expenses for the new section of development is being prorated to the developers of those homes?
The expectation, when we need to work on this, but in the transportation system plan update that we did in order to get the urban growth boundary expansion complete, the assumption was that the cost of the roads within those expansion areas would be developer funded. I think our funding group is questioning that assumption, so they will be dealing with that topic over the winter. And so we'll probably have a different recommendation coming out in the spring.
But it's not just the roads within the development.
Yeah,
The
it's-
development will also increase the traffic flow on the arterial and the feeder
I'm
roads.
gonna let you-
So that is a cost that does not appear to be factored into simply the roads within the development.
So,
Please introduce yourself.
yeah, I'm sorry, Tom Hickman, Director of Engineering and Infrastructure Planning for the city. So, what you're talking about is the system development charges for whether we're talking water, sewer, or transportation. On every project, we look at what elements of that project should new development be paying for. And it's a formula, it's gotta be defensible, there's a lot of financial law and state law that goes behind that. But ultimately, we come up with a portion of every project is paid for by SDCs. Some projects, they can be up to 100% funded by system development charges. The problem with that, though, is system development charges come in after the fact. So you build the home, once the home is occupied, essentially that's when SDCs get paid. You need the infrastructure before then. So a lot of these projects get front-loaded one way or another to get paid for first, and then you use SDCs to pay off the financing on those projects. So that's kind of how it works roughly.
Well, wouldn't a bond measure effectively be paid by the,
Ideally, that's what we try to do, is have it so that a bond measure would get paid for, at least partially paid for by the SDCs.
Not entirely, they're part of it.
Yeah.
thank you.
Good question. Anybody else? Are we moving on?